Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar session, Getting Started with CK-12's Adaptive Practice and Assignments. I'm Katie, one of the CK-12 team members, and my colleague Lindsay and I will be running today's webinar.
Before we get started on the main content for today's webinar, I want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with the two Zoom window options. You should see one that says Q&A and one that says chat. And we already have an active chat going, which is great. Seeing people from Denver, Washington, South Africa, Pennsylvania, Missouri. All of this is very exciting. Feel free to introduce yourself and where you teach and what subject in the chat window if you would like. It just helps for you to select all panelists and attendees so that everybody can see what it is you're contributing to the community chat window. The Q&A window is the place that we like to keep organized for questions that you have for the presenters throughout the webinar. So that's the best place to ask anything that you want to make sure you get addressed or that you see in a demo when we occasionally stop and field questions. So we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, but if you're having any trouble with your video or sound, you can let us know, and we'll get off and running with today's content.
So in this webinar, we'll be covering the following topics. We'll start with CK-12's Adaptive Practice System. So we'll talk about that intelligent system that has 150,000 plus questions in it and how it kind of adapts to student performance by challenging them or recommending resources. We'll talk about CK-12 classes, both creating and managing classes, along with features such as sharing content, hosting discussions, making assignments, and more. And please note that if you use a learning management system that's integrated with CK-12, so something like Canvas or Schoology or Google Classroom, you wouldn't need to also make a class in CK-12. You would just keep your classes in that learning management system. And then finally, we'll talk about assignments and student progress. So assigning practice and other modalities, seeing student work, including the answers that they put in there, as well as the level of question and the time spent and more within CK-12 classes. So the main goal for today is that by the end of this session, you understand how our adaptive practice system works. You can assign practice and other modalities to your classes, and you can monitor student progress. So I'd like to launch a poll right now just to find out a little bit more about your experience with adaptive practice, as that will help us as we work our way through this webinar. So the first question asks, how familiar are you with the CK-12 adaptive practice tool? So you're brand new to it, that's a perfect session for you. You've used it a little bit, still a great session. You've used it frequently, so maybe you have an idea of what's happening with it, but maybe you don't know as much about assignments or classes. And maybe you've even customized it into an adaptive practice quiz, and that kind of changes it from adaptive practice into a quiz. And then the next question asks about the different modalities that you might have assigned to your students, and that talks about the core modalities that we offer. So adaptive practice, quizzes, reads, our combined practice and reads in our new 2.0 Flexbooks, videos, simulations, Plix interactives, real-world applications, or you're brand new to assignments in CK-12 and you have done none of the above. But feel free to take a minute to click your way through all of those. You can choose more than one option. And then, yeah, I'll just pause for a few seconds to let you answer that. We'll give you a little bit more time to kind of wrap up where it looks like we're getting most of the people, but I know there's many choices in that second question. So it might take a second to answer that, and then we'll go on from there.
All right, Katie, I'm curious. Should we go ahead and share the results?
Yeah, let's see what we have here. So it looks like most of you guys are new. A couple of you occasionally in here have used it frequently or have started customizing. So this will be a good refresher for some of that core knowledge, and then also some pieces that we've tweaked as we continue to update CK-12 and what we offer. Definitely keep an eye out for our new reports feature if you have been using CK-12, because that's something that we're excited to show you today as well. And then it looks like people have done a variety of different pieces of assigning, going all the way into assigning 2.0 Flexbooks as well. So I think with that, let's talk about what you're going to learn in today's session.
Perfect. Thanks for participating in that poll, everybody. Today, by the end of this session, you will be able to, you're going to be able to find appropriate practice for various concepts, assign practice, as well as reads, interactives, and other modalities to your classes. I'm going to show you how to create a new CK-12 class for those of you who want to utilize our classes and make changes to existing classes. I'm going to show you how to find detailed per question feedback on students, and then how else you can see, what a number of your students in the class have done on a certain assignment. So we also run a customizing CK-12 adaptive practice and assignments. It's more of an advanced session. So if you are going to be taking that later on, here are the things that you would learn in our advanced customizing CK-12 adaptive practice assignments. That's where we talk about customizing practice into quizzes, all the different settings for quizzes, how to add concepts into a quiz, selecting and reordering questions in a quiz, creating new questions, using our math editor, creating multi-concept assignments, and student reports to multi-part assignments and quizzes. So if you're wanting any additional help with these skills right now, or if you have questions about CK-12's integration with learning management systems like Google Classroom and Canvas and Schoology, just be aware that this is a getting started webinar. So we're going to focus more on the basics, and we're going to prioritize questions related to the basics during the webinar. But at the end, we always stay on afterward and we address more personalized or complex questions. So if you do need to see something on this slide toward the end of the presentation, we could definitely stay on and help you with that.
So we've also created this handy resource page that you saw for a split second as I went backwards, but you can find it at the tiny URL listed on this screen, tinyurl.com/CK12practice. And we've put it in the chat window as well, so you'll be able to access it quickly from there. We really want this to be a resource for you as we go through this webinar, if you're doing an assignment for a certified educator program, or just as a reference as you work your way through using our practice tool and our assignments. So with that, let's move into adaptive practice and what it is. So first of all, what is adaptive practice? So CK-12's adaptive practice tool is a digital assessment tool, and it's going to adapt to student input. So that will help them master the next step for any concept, because it meets them kind of where they are with easier questions if they're struggling, or harder questions if they're doing well and successfully answering. And if they are struggling, we'll even stop them and give them recommendations, text to read, video to watch, something like that, if they find it too challenging. And then why you should use it. So we have about 150,000 questions. Most of them are math and science questions. And with those, we have reports of student progress for any assigned work that you have. So that allows you to kind of get an idea of how students are spending their time, what that looks like, what their answers are. And then also, where can you find it? So you can access this on the website, CK12.org. And there's also a free CK-12 app that's available for smartphones and tablets. And that's just for kind of that practice quiz assignments. It's not for other pieces, but those practice and quizzes you can access via that app. So students could use that on a tablet or a phone as well.
Like Katie just said, there are several different ways to access adaptive practice on our site. And I'm going to show you various ways to do that in a live walkthrough in just a minute. But one easy shortcut is to go to www.ck12.org/practice. Okay, so let me just show you kind of step-by-step how it works. Our adaptive practice system is set up to challenge students to answer 10 questions correctly. So students will see this at the top of their practice. It'll say, get in the game, get 10 answers to complete your practice goal. Our system meets students where they are with 3 levels of questions, easy, medium, and hard. The system will match the student's level and will gradually increase or decrease difficulty depending on how students are performing. This means that a student who's struggling may hit a goal of 10 correct with mostly easy questions, but then a student who's more advanced would have more of a mix of levels. For teachers, this ensures that each student is progressively and appropriately challenged while maintaining a clear record of each student's level of understanding. Having questions that adapt to students' needs is awesome, but CK-12 takes it to the next level by making content recommendations in the moment. This is huge. If a student is struggling, CK-12 will intervene by recommending helpful resources like reads and videos. This truly is the magic to the system. If you are teaching like 5 classes a day with 30 students in each class, it is difficult to differentiate for all students in the moment, but our system does the heavy lifting for you and ensures that students are being appropriately challenged and supported. Okay, so when you select practice for any concept, in this case, what we're showing here is adding whole numbers, you will see this main screen. When logged in with a teacher account, one of the first things you see at the top is the option to assign this to your class. And you can just keep that button in mind because it's going to be relevant when we discuss assignments here in a little bit. To the far right, you'll see the option to download practice as a worksheet. And then the icon in between that says customize will be discussed in more detail in the customizing CK-12 adaptive practice and assignment session. Okay, so you will always get a time estimate for how long our system thinks it will take a student to answer 10 questions correctly. And at the bottom in the prepare before you practice section, notice how our intelligence system assigns a percentage to different modalities to show how a student might score after studying that resource. And then of course, there's the big orange button in the middle that says start practicing. So let's look at what students will see when they start to practice. All right, up at the top, we've got some navigation up there. We've got a navigation menu that returns to the previous screen and allows the user to submit their work. Or also over on the far right there, you'll see that a student can stop for now. They can always stop their practice at any time. The second thing we have labeled here, we're going to pop up a bunch of numbers. Number 2 is the progress bar, and this displays the number of questions answered correctly. So you can see that our system has already set the goal of getting 10 correct. This is a system requirement and cannot be changed by the teacher or student. All right, then number 3, this is the battery charger. That will increase or decrease based on the student's streak. So sometimes it'll say like 3 times or 4 times if the student is getting several correct in a row. It will turn red and decrease if the student has missed several in a row. You're going to see all different types of questions in practice. They'll include multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, and select all that apply. We have hints available in the bottom left during practice for almost all of our concepts. The arrow buttons allow users to cycle through various hints provided. And you could also press the got it button that allows users to cycle through various hints as well. And then we have a scratch pad that's available. So students who are doing this on the computer can use their mouse to write, or if they're on tablets, they can use their fingers. But the scratch pad can be a powerful tool for them to work out problems. And then all of our questions have this improve this question spot where you as a teacher or the students, if they see something that they want to improve, give CK-12 feedback, they can always improve this question. All right, so that was a little bit of a walkthrough. Now I am going to steal the screen and I'm going to do this for you live. So again, that you guys start getting some confidence to go to our site and find these practice things yourselves. All right, so I am looking at the home page and I am logged into a demo account, but I am signed in as a teacher, and I'm signed in as a teacher because it says switch to student version up here. I told you that you could access practice directly at ck12.org/practice, but I want to show you several different ways to navigate from our home page. Okay, so I could either use our subject branches here, or I could go up to the search bar and I could search for a concept. Let's look for a geometry concept on the midpoint formula. You can see that when I start typing, it'll automatically, if I type correctly, it'll start populating and it's gonna pull up all kinds of things on the midpoint formula. I can use the filters to the left to find what I'm looking for, or I'm going to click on what we call a concept page for geometry. And here's where I see all of the different modalities that we have on the concept midpoint formula. So my goal to show you something today is that I wanted to show you how to access practice from a concept page. But if you guys have never seen a concept page before, just remember it is that easy that you can search for any concept on CK-12 and find all different ways to engage your students in learning. But if I want to open up this practice on the midpoint formula, this is a little different screen than on your walkthrough. But as a teacher, over here on the left, I have the ability to assign to a class. So if I selected that, I could assign it to a CK-12 class, which I'm going to show you how to use. Or for you Google Classroom users, you would always want to go the route of Google Classroom and assign directly to your classes through that. I can preview these questions, and you will see what I was just walking you through. This is the setup. I can stop for now. We've got the 0 out of 10, the progress bar, the scratch pad, where I can do some math here, very poorly. I can get a hint, and I can select answers. Even when the student might miss something, notice that they still get some helpful hints. It's usually positive. Here's I got one right. So my battery pack is thinking about increasing me. Plot spoiler, I'm going to get this one wrong. Every mistake is an opportunity, the system tells me, so that's nice and encouraging. I'm going to get that one wrong too. And the system's not going to let me miss too many in a row before it intervenes. So here you see that I missed a couple, and our intelligence system said, hey, you know what? We recommend that you do a little reading on the midpoint formula, that you use one of our Plix interactives, or that you watch a video on the midpoint formula. So when you as the teacher are so busy with other things and you can't get to every single student, with all of their needs, our system is taking care of that for you, where the student can continue to be engaged, to fill in the gaps of what they're missing. They can return to practice, or again, they can choose to do one of these activities here and pick back up where they left off. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop for now. And you're going to see that here, you will always get a report. The student will always get a report. We'll talk about this more in detail in a bit. But you can see that I was just 10% to my goal. I only got 1 out of 10. It'll give you information about your best streak, your best time, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, but I was going to try to show you more ways to find practice. So that's one way. I searched and I found the practice on a concept page. I'm going to click on the logo here to go back to the home page. And another way that I like to access different ways of learning is to scroll down and come down to these little circles. Here is easy access to our simulations, to our Plix, or here's where I can click on adaptive practice. So a slightly different look for this adaptive practice page. If I went over to a physics concept, I'm going to show you motion in 2 dimensions here, just to show you, can you see over here on the right that it says 20%, 50%, 70%? It is showing me within this adaptive practice window practice that I've already attempted. So I never got 10 out of 10 correct because I'm still missing some. That's what these percentages indicate. But I could click on these and go back in and continue to do the practice at any time. Okay, but let me show you, let's say I wanted to come down to circular motion and gravity. And let's pick orbital motion. So once again, I arrive at this page that tells me how long it thinks that it'll take the student to complete this to get 10 questions correct. I have some suggestions down here. So before I practice, I can do a read, I can do an interactive, a Plix, a video, and then I can start practicing once again. Okay, and then this is what we talked about earlier, that here's another assigned to class option, which will take you either to a CK-12 class or to the Google Classroom option. And you can also download this practice as a static worksheet. Obviously, it's not going to increase in difficulty or decrease in difficulty, but if you needed a hard copy of the questions, you would be able to do that as well. Okay, I'm going to close out of that. And I'm going to go back to our homepage. So I showed you you could search for it. You could also browse through these branches and get to adaptive practice, or you can go to the circle and do it. Just to give you a little preview of what this looks like in our brand new FlexBooks 2.0, we have launched a new platform for our books, and it's very exciting. It's very sleek looking, and all of our modalities are unified. But let me just show you here, like within our algebra book, for instance, let's pick something good. Exponential expressions. If I am in a read within a new FlexBook 2.0 book, for you guys who are interested in using the books, there is an option to view practice down here. So we have linked our content to our practice. And as a teacher, I would be able to assign this. I could preview it. And then the students, they're going to be able to do the practice right alongside with the read, which is very exciting. Okay. Why don't I stop there for a second, and we'll check in with Katie, and we'll see what kind of questions you guys have.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. So it looks like we just got one question about textbooks so far, so feel free to, while I'm talking about that, kind of ask your questions in Q&A. We'll stop a couple times throughout this webinar to answer them. The question was about aligning content to a particular state, and our content, I know state standards update constantly. I was just in Indiana a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about how they just changed other pieces of testing and things. And our stuff is customizable, so you can adjust it at any point as the states constantly change curriculum. So feel free to use those customization options to realign it as anything changes. But I don't think we have any questions specifically on practice. So Lindsay, I think you're just answering them as you go by automatically presenting. So to all of you joining us today, feel free to add those in as we continue on from there.
Awesome.
But
I love it when I'm answering all of their questions. That's great.
Yeah. So let me switch back. I'm going to steal the screen for a second. And we are going to start by just giving you a brief introduction to one of our certified educators from the first year we did that full program in 2017. And we went to visit this educator, Nathaniel Eugene, and he got to see how he regularly used adaptive practice in some pretty cool ways with his middle school math students.
There are three big reasons that I really want them to be on CK-12. The first thing I think is what it does, it allows them to improve, it allows them to extend the lesson that I'm teaching, so they could maybe build on skills that I can't cover in the classroom. And sometimes when they come to me, they have a lot of learning gaps. CK-12 allows them to focus on those skills that I can't touch on class.
So does 80 go into 1,000?
The question they're working on actually is slightly above grade level, but they trying to challenge themselves. So they're probably going to be for just a little while trying to figure it out. But that's one of the reasons I use it, so that our slightly higher kids could get an extra challenge. Another thing is it makes them very competitive, very motivated, and they tend to do better on standardized testing when they are that motivated. When you send kids to the board, you actually get to see them struggle. You see things that you really wouldn't notice if you went up front. I trust over to them so that it becomes more student-centered as opposed to just teacher-centered.
That's 20 minus 36.
And then you have, well, what's 20 minus 36? Can you simplify 20 minus 36? By them being able to access the Plix activities, the flex books, the videos, they choose the styles that they want to learn in.
I think CK-12 is very beneficial to me because when I don't understand a certain concept in the classroom, I usually just go look on CK-12 and he puts the assignment up there so like he can make us understand, and the first thing he always tells us to do is watch the videos and like use the reading to try to help us, and that really helped me out learning like polynomials, how to multiply them, factoring them.
It makes them more independent of me, and for me it's more than just standardized testing. It's making them lifelong learners, independent learners, so they can actually go ahead of me and touch on topics that I haven't even covered yet, because they have that confidence that I can learn it in the way that I want to learn it.
Cool. So that was hopefully one example that was just helpful to see. That's a totally new way that we hadn't seen about using our scratch pad. It works really well with a marker on a tablet or something like that. But on a smart board like that, it was pretty cool to see. And then just seeing kind of different grades in the same class all doing different things based on how they were progressing with their learning. So with that, I think we're going to move past adaptive practice and we're going to start talking about CK-12 classes. These help you manage assigned work, let you see student progress, and we're just going to reiterate once again, if you're using a learning management system like Canvas, Google Classroom, or Schoology that we're fully integrated with, we recommend that you do not create a CK-12 class, that you actually just keep your class in that learning management system so that you and your students are familiar with the environment and you're not trying to figure out where your reports are or where your assignments are, but they're always in that same place. So we're going to talk about setting up a CK-12 class, but we'll talk about some pieces in here that you'll be able to see kind of down the road, but you'll definitely just keep that in mind as we're working our way through. So CK-12 classes, what are they? They enable you to share resources. You can host group discussions, you can make assignments, and then you can see student reports. And a lot of these you can do within an integrated learning management system. You could just share a URL to a resource instead of the shared a class option on CK-12. As we said, kind of those resources allow you to really understand how your students are doing and kind of set up that digital classroom for you to use. And you can get it, and these, I would say in general, you're accessing through the CK-12 class option or the dashboard icon at the top of your page. Kids can access assignments through the practice app, but for the most part, classes as a whole, you would be accessing through the web.
Okay, well, I think that's the perfect transition for me to go back to sharing my screen and show them what this looks like on our website. So here I am back at our homepage. And when you are logged in as a teacher, up here at the top, you're going to see several different menu options. You've got your dashboard, you've got classes, your library, access to our cafe, which is our digital form, some standards alignment options here as well. So the point of this section is to show you classes. So I'm going to click on classes. And like Katie said, this wouldn't be the best option for everybody. But when you guys are introducing yourselves, it looked like several people said that they were homeschool educators or some districts that don't have a learning management system. They're using CK-12 classes. And so this can be a great option, especially when it comes to differentiating and putting students in different groups. But what this looks like is if you have never set up classes, you are likely going to get a little walkthrough tutorial on our site. I obviously have some classes set up here, so I don't get that little walkthrough tutorial. But anytime I want to add new classes, there is a plus sign over here. And so here's one option. If I press the plus sign, I have the option to create a class or to join a class. So I'm going to create a class. And here is where you can set up your new class name. So you can call this Algebra Hour 1 or Hour 1 Purple Group if you have, different groups within a class. I'm going to call this a really exciting thing. I'm going to call this Demo February 2019. Super flashy. I could add in a description for my class here. I could pick the subjects. Will be a physical science class today. And you could pick a theme for your class and you can create your class. So once I've done that, you're going to see that I now have another class option down here. You'll see that there is a class code, and that might be one way that I want students to be able to join my class. But let me go into the class here. So the first thing that I need to do probably is to add some students to my class. And CK-12 is telling me that this class is empty, add students. So I have several different options for getting students into my class. And which one you choose will vary depending on your situation. But you could invite students by email. And so if I selected that, hi there, I'd like you to join my class. There's some instructions, but basically they're clicking join class and entering in a code. Okay, so I could email students. If students don't have an email, I could create student accounts as well. Another way to do this is to, like I said, add students without an email by creating counts. If you are using the same students kind of year after year, you could find existing students that you've already used in CK-12 classes and put them into another class. Or you also have options for uploading a class roster, which you need a CK-12 assist on this. So you guys send us a kind of a spreadsheet of the users, and we help you get those into your classes. So a couple of different ways. I would say the class code is a pretty easy one for students to get signed into your classes. I've been in a bunch of classes where they have jump codes or QR codes that the kids take a photo of it or use the scanner and are able to join the class immediately. So you have some options in the getting students into your class. Once you have students in the classes, let me go back to find one that's got some work populated in it here. This one has a few assignments in it. Anytime I want to look at how my class is doing, I've got some options over here on the left. So just as a kind of quick walkthrough here, we have some assignments that this will allow a teacher or a leader to create assignments with due dates, and you can review progress, which we'll talk more about here in a minute. But I could see different assignments and creation date, start date, due date, if it's been assigned. These are things in my class, or here are things that I've created across many different classes. So that's what you find over in assignments. With reports, here's where you're going to be able to see how your students are doing at a glance, which I'm going to go through with you here in just a minute. We have a Q&A feature, which I've been in a few classrooms where people are really utilizing this powerfully, where students and teacher can engage in conversation, can post a question and get some answers and just have a dialogue going on within your classroom. If this is an option that you want to disable, down in settings, you have some control over your Q&A. We also have some shared resources. Only the teacher can add shared resources, but sometimes you just want to add something for reference that's not necessarily assigned to your students. Here with members, this is where you can control who is in the class, who's the class leader. You can add a co-teacher, you can add students, so you've got controls over your members. And then again, in the settings, you can control about your email notifications and your Q&A settings as well. And if you're ready to delete a class, you can delete classes too. So why don't I come up for air here for a second on just CK-12 classes. What do we have going on, Katie?
So we have a question that maybe if you go back to the class dashboard, it's specifically about creating classes on CK-12 and now using a learning management system and asking about deleting classes. So if you are now using CK-12 in Google or something and you no longer are using the CK-12 class feature and you want to hide those, you can click on those three little buttons that Lindsay's about to click on and you can hide that from your dashboard. So if she hides that, she can then see hidden classes or current classes, and it really just kind of puts it in a separate category. So she could go back to hidden classes and say, oops, I actually wanted that demo back out here, and we could unhide it. But you're definitely, I would recommend if you're no longer using that in order to deliver content to your students, that you kind of just clear it out of your dashboard, whether or not that's I'm done with that semester or I'm done, kind of using that, and that will keep it very clean in terms of where you're putting content and what that's looking like. We had a couple just general questions about CK-12 and webinars. This webinar is being recorded. We will post it tomorrow on the webinars page, so you'll definitely be able to see that. You can even see the last one we did on there already. And then a general question about CK-12 asking the teacher versus student version, and is one of them paid and one of them's free. Everything we offer on CK-12 is free to all of our users. The only thing you can't do is sell our content. You can customize it, you can reuse it in your class, but it is free to use. That's really kind of the mission of CK-12, is to make learning accessible. So don't worry about a version that's not free. It does not exist on our site. But yeah, so I think with that, we are going to kind of continue to move on. Feel free to keep populating those questions. Let us know what you have, but we'll get into the heart of assignments, because I feel like those are the core piece of why you would want to use classes and how you would get practice there as well. And we will go from there. So let me take this back for a second. I'm going to share my keynote, And then we're going to click play. So with that, assignments. So for CK-12, you can assign a number of different things. You can assign practice, as we've been talking about, or customized practice, which is what we call quizzes, reads, videos, simulations, Plix interactives, and real-world applications, all sorts of different options for assignments as you're working your way through. And so the next thing that you the point of assigning it, you could just have your students explore CK-12, but really the goal of assigning is that then you can see how the students are progressing, and you can use that report and that information to kind of tailor your teaching or work with students to enhance their learning. And those can be created in reports accessed through that CK-12 class that Lindsay was just talking about, or through learning management systems. The big ones that we're fully integrated with are Canvas, Schoology, and Google Classroom. Edmodo does practice as well, but the other three will do all of these different types of assignments as you work your way through. And so a second ago, but let's talk about what those really are. So the first is what we call a read on CK-12, and that is really a section of a textbook. It might be just kind of by itself, or in one of our CK-12 textbooks, or in a textbook that you have customized, but you can assign any section within there to a student, and at this point in time, you'll get a completion grade. We'll talk about that in a second, kind of what grades you get for what type of modalities. But first option is text. Another learning modality would be a video, pretty standard. We have a variety of videos on our site. They're accessible, and you could assign those to students and encourage them to watch that as a learning option. We also have two different types of interactives. We have our Plix interactives and our simulations. Plix are for math and science across the board for different subject areas. Simulations, right now we have physics simulations and some chemistry simulations. So we kind of always work on what's coming next, and not really sure now that's what we have available. And those interactives encourage exploratory learning. And so you could assign those and encourage students to do some part of that exploration and learn that way. Then we have our practice, or that customized practice and quizzes. We've been talking about that enough. And finally, what we call our real world applications. And these, I was a high school pre-calc teacher. I always got asked, when am I ever going to use this? And our goal was really to say, here's an example of this concept used in the real world. And you could have students do that lesson, read through it, answer some questions, and kind of work their way through. But that's another learning modality. And then the last piece that we've kind of referenced here and there is our new 2.0 Flexbooks. And in that case, the read and the practice come together as a single thing that you're assigning together. So with that, let's talk about what that looks like. This chart, as overwhelming as it may seem, is on that reference sheet that we gave you that you can download at any point in time. So you don't need to write down all these notes or memorize it, but we really wanted you to understand what it was working out of. So for our adaptive practice, that is a practice tool on our site. It's really set up as 10 correct, turning in at any point in time, and it's really that goal mark of I got 7 correct or 10 correct. They might have been hard questions or easy questions, but it's encouraging practice by students. And in CK-12, that percent will be 100% if they got all 10 correct. It'll be 70% if they got 7 correct, whatever that is. In a learning management system where you're setting for this assignment a point value, let's say you set 20 points for this homework practice. If they got 100% correct or 10 correct, they would get the full 20 points. If they only got 5 correct, they would get half of that, or 10 correct. 10 points in there. Quizzes, on the other hand, that customized practice where you can set and every student gets kind of the same thing. And that, if you are interested in doing, definitely join us for our customizing CK-12 practice piece. But you're looking at those quizzes, those options from there, and that's a true assessment piece where you're saying everyone gets the same questions and my score is a percentage of the total correct. And that's a percentage of 100 if you're looking at it in CK-12, or the matching percentage of the points you chose in an LMS. So those are two kind of actual scores values that you could get there. The other ones give you full or no credit. They're really learning modalities. So our standard text, video, RWAs, which is that real world application, they can turn that in once they've opened it and started to access that learning. For interactives and simulations, they have to do a little bit of exploration before they can do that. So I think in Plix, it wouldn't let me turn it in until I did like a challenge question or two. Simulations, you have to start doing that part. And those are full or no credit. So check mark in CK-12 or no check mark. And then if you made 10 points for that Plix, they would get 10 points or no points. And then I just put a little note at the bottom that says, remember that text and practice are one assignment within our new 2.0 Flexbooks. So you don't get a separate check mark for the read. You just get the practice score kind of as what is being reported to you. So all sorts of information there. This is a reference piece. You do not have to memorize this. It's totally accessible on that sheet. So just keep that in mind as you're working your way through.
Okay, so to break that down a little bit for you, again, we don't expect you to start assigning everything all at once, but hopefully you can find some resources on our site that you can start implementing right away. So for instance, if we go to the next page here, wait for it. There we go. I showed you a little bit as we were navigating the assign to class option that we have across different screens, but you see over there on the left the assign to class button in orange, and this is a common place to find ways to assign things on our site. So if you are looking at a read, again, what we call a lesson, or a real world activity, or a real world application, or a video, that's where you'll find the assign to class option there as well. You'll notice at the top right of the screen, you have the ability to assign the matching practice right from the read. And so this is one of our concept collection Flexbooks. It looks a little different, as Katie has been referencing, in our new Flexbook 2.0 platform. But if you go to a Plex, one of our bite-sized interactives. If you haven't explored these, I really suggest you check out our Plex. But at the top of all of our Plex, you will see this orange assign to class button. So that's what you would press to assign it to your class. And then, like Katie said, you need to start engaging with the interactive, answer a challenge me question, and then that's when it will trigger a completion score to the class or the learning management system. This is very similar with our simulations. Also, the assign to class option up at the top, which it will, after you've interacted with the simulation, made it to the sandbox area, I think, you'll have the ability to kick out a score to the learning management system or the class as well. So the question on your minds might be, what do these reports actually look like? So I'm going to go back to that classroom we were checking out earlier and show you some scores. So from the homepage again, I could go directly to classes, but let me just real quick show you. If I go to my dashboard, this is going to show me some of my recently viewed content, which these are things that we've been looking at in this webinar. I get some information about some trending concepts, and then some videos, some clicks, some simulations. So your dashboard could help serve up some interesting information to you. Up here, where it says I have 15 classes, if I click on that, it flips the tab over to the classes page, and I'm going to go to this demo CEP 2018-2019 class just because we have some work already populated in there. All right, so I showed you what these left nav options do, but let's go to reports. And so at a glance here, we can see these are the students in the class. We've used first name and a last or middle initial here for students. You might have first and last name. The class will be shown vertically here. They'll be organized by last name. Over to the right, you get the different assignments. And this has been the look of our reports for quite some time now. But we have some new exciting options for reports that I'll click on in just a second. But let's look at what a practice report looks like. So if I go to the integer practice, this is actually a multi-concept practice of integer addition, subtraction, and integer review. I can see that Carl is the all-star student here, where he has been getting 100%. So I'm going to click on his integer subtraction report. And this is where I can get as granular as I would like with these student reports. So sometimes you as teachers, let's be honest, like you're going to assign something and you're going to be happy just to get the completion score or the percentage score out of 100 on practice, and you're going to move on with your day. But there are other times when, say, you're actually really concerned about Carl and his engagement and his understanding of different concepts, or maybe you have a parent-teacher conference coming up where you need a little ammunition to, show the parents exactly what Carl is doing in class. This can be a solid report. Okay, so what we learn here is, again, the due date, the date that was submitted. He reached the goal of 10 correct, so he got 100% on this. His best streak was 10, so he got them all correct. He spent 2 minutes on it. So maybe this was too easy for Carl because it didn't take Carl very long to get 10 correct. I think he has mastered subtraction and he can probably move on to another concept. But here is where you're going to get the breakdown of how many of those questions were easy, medium, and hard. So he has progressed through more difficult questions. And if he had kept going beyond the 10 correct, students can always keep going, I would guess he would have been served up a lot more hard questions. Here you can see exactly the question and then how it was answered. So if he had missed any of these, it would be in red and it would show the correct answer as well. So this is the same report that Carl would have seen when he submitted the practice, and this is the same report that you have access to as a teacher. So that's pretty cool. So again, I can see practice at a glance here, or the different, not just practice, but the different activities. I can also click on Katie, and I can get a report just for Katie. I can see her latest assignments and scores. I can see, this is my work, not to brag. Uh-oh, don't look at my subtraction. But I can click on other students' work, and I got 10 out of 11 easy questions correct. So my best streak was 7, and I didn't spend much time on it. Whew, that was a tough one. So you can, again, drill down as much as you'd like on these different reports. What is very exciting is that we now have a new report system. And so you can try it out by pressing Try New Reports. And we have a little walkthrough video here that is like a minute long that shows you what it will look like, because it's kind of hard to tell if you don't already have students and assignments in your gradebook. But at its heart, what it's doing is it's going to be just kind of a cleaner layout with the due date up at the top. We've got clear labels for what it was that you assigned. Like Katie was talking about earlier with the check marks for completion on the PLIX, or the check mark of that the student, they opened the read. Here are the scores on the practice. Quizzes will give a true score out of how many you assigned on the quiz and how many they got correct. But we have added another layer on top of this. So we can even do a heat map. If I select the heat map option, now, without having to do too much reading at all, I can see that what we already knew, Carl's just the all-star student. He's all in the green here. Everything's looking good. This easily alerts me to the fact that Ryan's missing his work in red, so I might want to follow up with Ryan. But we're going to continue to improve our reports. You guys want to check this out. If you are needing to export from a CK-12 class to a gradebook system, you do have the ability to export a CSV file, which usually you can upload into a lot of different systems. But that will give you the different scores. So back within classes, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to show you guys. Well, why don't I stop? Katie, do we have some questions about reports and assignments?
We don't have, we had not about reports right now, but why don't I steal the screen back and actually show you what it looks like from a student side?
Oh, great.
Just for a bit. So the reporting itself looks the same. So that same report, that detailed report, looks identical, but their dashboard is a little bit different. So you're starting with your latest assignments part here. It gives you just a really quick and easy place to be like, oh, this is what I need to do for class. I can start this. If there are multiple parts in an assignment, they could start any part of it right from there. The next thing is their class activity. So for a student that's in multiple classes, they might see, let's say their science and their math teacher is doing something, or they're taking 2 math classes, or whatever that looks like. They can see updated content, whether they posted a new assignment or they just joined, or what's happening in those classes pretty easily from there. And then they have the option to self-study. So even if there isn't content that's been directly assigned to them, they can still use the rest of CK-12 to help them with learning. So I've definitely met students who said, my bio teacher is using it and I was struggling in math and I just went on to CK-12 and I started practicing on there. So that keeps track of anything that's a self-study that is really working their way through concepts in any topic across CK-12 and will give them an idea of what they're doing there, as well as looking through the practice app or the practice icon that Lindsay navigated through earlier. So all sorts of options, but their dashboard's a little bit different because they're looking at it from the class perspective or that self-study perspective, but the actual reports for content are the same. And when you, as a teacher, you click preview, that's exactly what a student would see if they were practicing. And the last thing they're gonna see is, for example, right here, so this is a read. You don't see this if you've assigned it. You see that little turn-in button with that teal background in CK-12. I think it's a slightly different color in some of the learning management systems, but they need to turn in their work. Just like if you gave them paper homework and they didn't submit it to you, you would not see how they did. Once they finish doing something, they need to turn that in so that it passes the score back to you so that you can see kind of what's happening. Because if they're working on practice and they're not done, they might not want you taking that score yet, as long as you haven't set the due date already. So they have the choice to turn in that practice when they hit a point that they want to do so, or after they've accessed content from there. So I think with that, we have a couple questions that have come up. One asked about a limit of number of students in a class. There is not a limit that we've hit yet from any teacher. I don't know if there's actually a really high number that it limits out at, but that's never been a problem. We generally recommend that you make your classes reasonable sizes. Don't put every single class period in the same class, because when you set an assignment, one class might be behind or ahead based on an early release or something else. So just keep that in mind as you're breaking up classes in CK-12.
Hey, Katie, we just got a question about, can students see reports if an LMS like Canvas is used? Can you explain what the difference is with the reporting ends? You know, I showed them CK-12 classes, but what might be a little bit different if using Canvas or Schoology?
Yeah, so Schoology is the one that I know is a little bit different. Our integration with Schoology is fixed where, based on their restrictions, we can only report a score. So you can't see that full detailed report, even as a teacher in Schoology. In Canvas and in Google Classroom, you can click on a link and it pops open that report for a teacher. I am under the impression that it's the same for students. I am 99% positive it's the same for Google. I haven't actually checked the full reporting piece, but I think when you finish, you still get the same kind of general information with level of questions and what you worked on from there. So I believe that's correct. If that's not, I will follow up with you after. But Schoology is the different one where you're just getting the score, you're not getting the full report. And if they make their system allow us to send that full report, we will be happy to do that as well. So that's kind of the one piece that's a little bit different from there. So I think that answers the open questions at this point in time. Let's give you a second to see if there's kind of anything else in here that we missed. We did have one person ask about verification for this. If you're looking for certification for whatever reasons, we'll talk about that in a minute, but you can always email us if you need something there as well. But yeah, so I think what we'll do is, we're hitting not exactly, but close to that hour mark. So I'm going to wrap up some just logistical pieces here and give you guys a chance to populate that Q&A with any other questions that you have at this point in time. We're happy to go through anything that's a little bit more in depth or outside of the world of practice as we wrap up this webinar too. We just want to make sure we made it through the core content over the course of this webinar. Just kind of show you a little bit of resource pages on our site. So ck12.org/tools and apps. You can also access that at the bottom of kind of the footer on CK-12 where it says tools and apps. And then you can find out information about the practice app we talked about, our Flexbooks and simulations app. The Sims app allows for offline use of our physics sims because those have been completed. We're still working through chemistry, so they're not available there yet. And the Flexbook app allows for offline use of all but our newest super interactive 2.0 Flexbooks. So you can find all of those there and access them offline, either in the app or our offline reader. And then there's some more information about some of those systems that we're integrated with. As we said, Edmodo and has Practice, Canvas, and Schoology, and Google Classroom allow for full integration. And then Clever and ClassLink are super quick single sign-on options. So if you're logged into there, you can log in directly, have CK-12 content available within their systems, but we're not integrated kind of in the same way. So with that, this webinars page, ck12.org/webinars, unless you clicked directly from a link within an email you probably got here in order to register. We do have 2 upcoming webinars that are still scheduled for later this month. One is advanced flexbook editing. So that talks about kind of a quick review of the basic skills and then further customizing flexbooks by doing things like embedding multimedia, using our math editor, all sorts of fun stuff as we work our way through there. And we'll show you how to embed some of our interactives as well, because those embed links are available to you now. And then for those that are using Canvas and Schoology, we do have a session specifically for that in late February on the 21st. And that will go into specifically how to link your 2 accounts, link your CK-12 account to there. It will talk about what that looks like, how to assign content. We do have recordings of all of these webinars already in the archive section of our webinars page. So if you're desperate to kind of join that and you don't have questions for us and you just want to get a refresher to start or an overview, you're always welcome to check out those recordings at the bottom, and we will add today's webinar to that as well. We mentioned this earlier in the session, but we have our tinyurl.com/CK12 practice. It has that chart. It has some other general information about our practice pieces. So definitely feel free to download that, check it out now or down the road. If you ever need a resource page, feel free to email us as well. And then you might have seen this little badge. For those of you that are new to our program, this session counts towards our CK-12 Certified Educator program, and that involves a number of pieces of live webinars and assignments and really kind of getting an understanding of the platform as a whole. You are welcome to count this. If you go to ck12.org/certified, you can sign up for that program. We'll send you more information. If you have questions, you can email us at jumpstart@ck12.org. And that program usually runs in kind of a condensed fashion in the summer for a couple of weeks in July. And registration for that summer sessions will go live probably shortly later this month or early in the spring. So keep an eye out for that, and we will go from there. If you have any feedback on this webinar today, please feel free to let us know. tinyurl.com/CK12webinar1819. We always try to take into account feedback from previous webinars to make the next one better. So please feel free to let us know if something worked really well or something was could have been done a little bit better today, and we will be happy to take that into account as we work our way through. So with that, I'm going to say anyone that needs to head off, you are welcome to do so. Thank you so much for joining us. You can email us directly at jumpstart@ck12.org for any program information or general support at ck12.org if you have tech questions. And don't forget to let your social networks know about CK-12 and your participation in our webinars. We are on all the socials as #CK12 Foundation. And as Google Plus retires that will be gone as well. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. So let's go back and see what questions might have come in. We'll give you guys a couple minutes to open any other questions if you have questions. And we had a question about the customizing practice webinar. Is that scheduled? That has not been scheduled yet for the spring. We did scheduling through the end of February. The recording of the one we offered this fall is available on that webinars page, but we will definitely be scheduling that one at some point this spring. So keep an eye out for that as well.
All right, well, we'll give everybody just a few more seconds to type in any last minute questions that you might have. But we do really appreciate you taking a time out of your day, your evening. We really appreciate that.
So we have one question about our Certified Educator program. If you're trying to recertify, we'll send anyone who has certified before information about that once we get some offerings available for that piece. But if you are just looking to get certified to begin with, we ask that you attend 5 live webinars, and that will give you a chance to explore the content and ask us questions and work your way through. And then there's a couple kind of on-demand pieces you can watch for general information as well. And it looks like we still have more program information. By live webinars, I'm talking about one that we have right now. There are 2 short videos as well, a recorded webinar broken up into pieces with general information. But 5 of these, just like the one you attended. So this one counts for 1, so 4 more. And then those 2 extra sessions that are just video recordings. They're not kind of anything else, and there's nothing in person. It would all be online. So I think with that, we are at the end of this webinar. If you have other questions, feel free to let us know. We've cleared out the queue, so we will sign off for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again in the future.